Hi there. Welcome to Chapter 1 of this textbook, Modern Inquiry into Life. This chapter, we're going to be talking about what living things are, how to classify living things, how to classify the environment. We'll talk about characteristics of living things, and we'll also talk about how we run experiments using the scientific method. So biology, in a nutshell, is just the study of life. So anything living falls under that category, biology. And life is everywhere. So you can look around you, and you may be the only what you think living thing in the room that you're in, but there's living things teeming around you. Life is in the air we breathe. There are bacteria in the air that we breathe. Life is on all surfaces, again, bacteria, including your body surface. So, I mean, it's everywhere. And life is diverse, which means there's a lot of types of living things. So we think, animals are living things, and there's a lot of types of animals, but animals are a small portion of all of the living things. There are plants, which there are way more plants than there are animals. There are protozoans, there are bacteria, there are archaea, there are fungi, algae. All of these things, all of these living organisms are part of the biology of life. So they all fall under the same category. And we all have certain characteristics that are similar. So these are the basic characteristics all living things have to be able to do or have. So all living things must be composed of cells. Cells produce new cells. So if it's not cellular, then it's not living. All living things are organized. There's some sort of organization associated with life. All living things must be able to acquire materials and get rid of and use energy. But we also must be able to get rid of waste products. So this is kind of the metabolism aspect of living things. We have to be able to reproduce, be it sexually or asexually. We have to respond to stimuli. Positive stimuli should be attractive to us. Negative stimuli should be something that we stay away from. All living things have to be able to maintain homeostasis, which is the maintenance of our internal system. And if we're not in homeostasis, then we are not doing well. And living things that are not in homeostasis often are considered diseased or sick and can die. We all are able to grow and develop. So growth, change in size, maybe change in number of cells, develop specializations, and we have to be able to adapt to our environment. The best adapted are the ones that are going to be able to make it in the world. So here is the first characteristic that all living things share. We are all cells. And so Robert Hooke is one of the earliest scientists to really look at cells. And what he did was he made this very minimal microscope, not minimal, I guess, very basic microscope, that's a better word. And with it, he was able to look at the cells of cork. And he noticed that there were these little tiny squares, and he thought they look very similar to the cells that he lived in. And so the cells that he lived in were called cells. So that's where he came up with the word cell. He called them cells, and that's where the term cell came from. He was able to see microscopic life in the form of in the form of fungi. And he drew it thinking they were microscopic flowers. And he published it in a book known as the Micrographia. All living things are organized. So we have an organization. All living things do. So the smallest unit that makes up both living and non-living things are atoms. Elements come together forming molecules. Molecules come together forming larger macromolecules. And macromolecules form our cells. Once we're at that cell level, we now are considered living. And so depending on the cell type or the organism type, we might stop at the cell level. Bacteria are cells. That's it. They're single-celled organisms. But for humans, our cells come together forming tissues. Tissues come together forming organs. Organs come together forming organ systems. And then when you have all those organ systems together, you have the organism. Same thing happens with plants, as you can see. Living things are going to gain energy and nutrients, and then they're going to get rid of waste. And so here we see a mama bird that's going to feed her babies, her young, her offspring. So they're gaining energy. In this case, these are animals. They take energy in the form of organic materials, so food, and I think that might be a worm, but I don't even know what that is that she's pulling on. Whatever it is, she's going to feed that to her offspring. And the offspring will gain nutrients and energy, or will gain the nutrients, and then we'll be able to use those nutrients to produce energy. The energy that they use is called ATP, and energy is the ability for us to do work. Living things have to be able to reproduce. So if I'm one living thing and I can't reproduce, then I'm not going to be able to pass on my genes, and my species would become extinct. So we reproduce either asexually, where one cell undergoes a process such as binary fission, or we go through sexual reproduction, where one cell goes through a process called meiosis and produces sex cells that have half the amount of gene information. And so that when another sex cell comes together, they can fuse, producing the new organism. Living things must respond to stimuli. Internal and external. So externally, we have a man holding a cup of coffee. This is very common. How many of you have ever touched something that was really hot and you immediately move your hand away from that hot stimulus? In this case, the man probably will drop his coffee. If not, he'll burn his fingers. But we also have to be able to respond to internal stimuli. Oftentimes, internal stimuli are responded to subconsciously. So we're not thinking about our blood pressure changing. We don't think about our heart rate decreasing or increasing. We don't think about our breaths changing or our body adjusting to cold or warm temperatures. We start to shiver when we get cold. We start to sweat when we get hot. If we could choose to shiver or sweat on command, that would be different. If we could say, oh, you know, my blood pressure is too high, I need to lower it, that would be different. But we subconsciously do this. So in either case, we are responding to those stimuli. Living things have to be able to maintain homeostasis. Homeostasis is the maintenance of the internal environment. So we're always changing. Our environment is constantly changing, and we have to be able to maintain a balance, equilibrium. So our body temperature stays at about 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, 37 degrees Celsius. If the temperature in the environment changes, increases, and we're in that environment, our body temperature could potentially go up if we were not in homeostasis. So what happens is, as soon as the heat hits our body and our body realizes, hey, this is causing us to get hotter, our body will respond by causing sweat glands to release sweat, which pulls the heat from the surface of our skin and releases it to the environment. Living things also have to be able to grow and develop. So growth means increase in size, increase in number of cells. Development means that you change. So you may have specializations within the cell. Here we have a plant that started as a seed, and it increased in number of cells as it was growing, and each of those cells started to specialize, becoming either part of the vascular system, becoming a leaf that was able to photosynthesize, and was able to do its job so that the entire organism could survive. And living things have to adapt. Adaptation is the ability to change at the genetic level to be able to survive in the environment better. So when the environment changes, you change as well. And I love this. This is the pepper moths. And you see some of those pepper moths are dark in color, and some of the pepper moths are very light in color. When the environment was cleaner, the wood or the trunk of a tree would be lighter in color, and that would hide the light colored pepper moths, whereas the dark colored pepper moths were able to be seen and picked off easier. Over on this side, you see a light colored pepper moth standing out on this dark tree bark because of all the soot that has laid down. The light colored moths are much easier to see than these dark colored moths right here. And so these dark moths now are less likely to be eaten because they are hiding. Here's another more of a joke adaptation. We adapt. This would be like a micro adaptation where we are changing our body so that we can better move through the water. And here's a duck who changed his flippers or his feet to human feet. So I thought that was kind of cute. It's a joke, but true adaptations are on the genetic level. And in general, we don't see adaptations in our lifetime in the organisms that are in the human population, but you can see adaptations in organisms that have a faster reproductive rate if you are studying them throughout their lifetime. And one of the best adaptations that I know of is adaptation to be able to survive in the presence of antibiotics, so antibiotic-resistant bacteria. I'm going to stop here for this first lecture, and then I'm going to post this on YouTube. Hopefully you will watch this lecture and you will have learned something from it. We will be talking about this on January 22nd, so make sure that you have watched it by then. Bye.